So some people ask me, why do you have so much faith in this upcoming Joker movie, Boba? Like, why, when it doesn't seem to follow what I know from the comics? We know his name is Arthur Fleck, we know too much about him, don't we? I mean, and does he even fall into the chemical vat? I mean, wait, how old is he? And Bruce is only, what, like 11? What the f***? Those comments, among a few others that you can probably imagine in your head, are the kind of fans who I have found to typically be not as excited as I am about this movie, which of course, you don't have to be excited about this movie, let me get that clear right out of the ballpark, but I think these specific fans don't necessarily realize that nowhere has it ever been written in the slabs of stone that the previously mentioned Joker cliched tales have to be applied, because guess what? The Joker has no definitive origin, and some of your favorite live action iterations, such as Heath Ledger, for as cliche as it sounds, has seemingly had none of those attributes to him. But boom, for a lot of fans, his portrayal was a favorite. But hold up, before you say it, guys, I do understand and appreciate that the mystery of the Joker's origin is one of the most enticing things about the character. But is it such a crime to explore an origin tale of this character if it nails it on the head? No, I don't think it is. If anything, I think it's fairly interesting and not even bold of me to say that this could somewhat be the most accurate and best Joker live adaptation ever, despite exploring the man before the madness. Now why? Some of you may be asking. Here we go. Joker, as you may already know, is a movie which is an exploration of a man disregarded by society that is not only a gritty character study, but also a broader cautionary tale. This is exactly what was shown in the trailer too. I mean, from the beginnings of the trailer, we see that Arthur Fleck is a man who isn't exactly living the high life of Gotham City. I mean, in fact, he is a guy who is living in like a Lower East Side apartment, taking care of his mother, and facing hardships in his day job as an aspiring comedian, which, you know, he seems to have a few roles that are explored in the film, which range from spinning a sign outside a store to even later on in the trailer actually performing some comedy the more he progresses into the Joker frame of mind. Now, I love how the trailer shows his lack of confidence at the beginning of this movie, with his lumbering walk throughout Gotham City, with his head and shoulders utterly slumped, echoing the mood of how his life is a tragedy, but completely contrasting the very end of the trailer where this man has finally found himself, his definitive self even, as the Joker. And the contrast between these two versions of Arthur Fleck is honestly just astonishing to me, with him even dancing down those very steps we saw him sorely walking up when he was barely hanging on to everyday life. Even just the way he carries himself as we see him transformed from his former husk is very captivating to witness. Yes, even from just a trailer. So just imagine how enticing it's going to feel to watch this shy man display on the silver screen the evolution from Arthur Fleck, a man disregarded by society, to a full embodied and confident clown prince of crime through a dark and thrilling yet tragic tale. Now, from what we know about the movie both before and after the trailer, is that Arthur is seemingly a nice man who is clearly struggling with mental illness. This is a man who has been told by his mother, and this is also clearly a code he's living by, to always smile and put on a happy face, which, you know, as nice as that advice sounds from Arthur's mother, for him, you could argue is causing him to invalidate his feelings and completely suppress his clear struggle with everyday life, which can definitely be seen through so many times in the trailer, which, you know, ultimately will contribute to his psychotic break into thinking his life is a comedy. Delving into mental health being a prime plot for the Joker rather than like a chemical vat of acid isn't all too far from the comics either, and as I mentioned earlier, isn't even the first time on screen that has been done and even loved. The Killing Joke is ultimately a story of interpretation. Those flashbacks aren't exactly concrete, as we've already touched upon. Joker remembers it one way and remembers it another, which has always been a popular way for the character to present himself. However, in those flashbacks in The Killing Joke, at face value, this, man was a failing comedian who took a dodgy job to try and support his wife and soon-to-be child, and then, unfortunately ends up losing them both, and, has has to still go through with the criminal activity job regardless. And after that goes awry, and him falling into the chemical vat, and of course it's nice to think how that chemical vat also added to his insanity and not just his looks, but it's not alien at all to think that just after one bad day, which, the Joker has explained many a time, can turn the most sanest man alive to complete lunacy. Joker, the movie, is going to be like that, but more or less after a series of unfortunate events mixed in with a declining mental health. And I think that couldn't be more appropriate for the character. Now, recently, Brian Tyree Henry spoke about the film and how it's different, and to be honest, this was perfect timing for this video as it goes hand in hand with what I want to say. He explains how villains are never born that way. They're made. There's something that happens in their lives that they just give up their faith in humanity and they see the flaws of humanity and mankind and feel like they must correct it. Much like how we just pointed out with the fans' most popular story, The Killing Joke. He continues to say, what happens with Joker is you start to see how he really was a happy person. He was just trying to find this, hope in humanity until it broke him and he just had to give up and reshape it. He further discusses how there's going to be a connection made about a boy and his mother. I mean, of course, this is heavily pointed out in the trailer too, and how he refers to his mum and what I just mentioned with the code of what he somewhat lived by with trying to remain positive in the face of all hardships. I think it's more or less a no-brainer that she will pass away at some point in the movie, and this will heavily impact his spiral descent into madness. I also like to think when it comes to Joker of how Gotham has shaped Arthur Fleck to become the Joker too. I mean, this is by far not a Batman movie, but no matter what with this Elseworlds movie, it's a place where the Batman will be in the next decade or so, regardless of how you feel about the age difference. Now, as much as I'm excited for this movie to be a character study of the Joker, I feel like the byproduct of this film being the creation of the Joker will in turn make Gotham City itself a character. I mean, after all, that is why Bruce Wayne becomes the man he will become one day, to prevent the scum and villainy that create more of their own, just like Arthur Fleck's evolution into the Joker in this movie. So I'm not going to go on about parts like this for too long, so I'll keep this brief, but I do appreciate how there is going to be a little bit of sprinkled Bruce Wayne into this movie. I loved that brief clip we saw of Arthur going up to Wayne Manor, likely trying to see Thomas Wayne, as that's going to be quite a part of the plot of this movie, but ends up seeing Bruce instead, and actually puts a smile on his face from what you can assume is a lonely Bruce playing on the grounds of Wayne Manor, finding his future arch nemesis to just be a funny clown, which to me is a nice bit of warm foreshadowing, but not too in your face. At the same time, I know some people hate the idea of this, but honestly, this really doesn't bother me. This movie isn't a Batman movie, and in fact, it couldn't be further away from it, and it won't have a magnifying glass on that. And as far as ages go, to just touch on this for fans who just need all the cards on the table, Jack Nicholson, for example, a loved portrayal of the Joker for many people, was in his 50s when he portrayed the role and when Batman came around. Now, Bruce, from what I can tell in this movie, can be Batman as early as 10-ish years from this movie's time setting. Joaquin Phoenix is in his mid-40s, so in my mind, it works just fine, but honestly, it really isn't important to what this movie is trying to actually be. So Thomas Wayne's role in this movie is also something I like in how, since we can't forget that this is, underline an Elseworlds film, this will explore quite a different Thomas to what you may be typically familiar with. I mean, Arthur clearly inspires a following of clowns in Gotham City to strike back with even signs of Wayne is to blame. This all adds, in my mind, into the character development of Arthur going from a shy, timid man to becoming a defiant, confident, and entirely different person by the end of the film. Now, as for Bruce Wayne's origin, I'm interested to see this movie's involvement of that. I do think it will be a bit cliche if somehow Arthur is involved in Thomas and Martha's death, and I'm mentioning this because, well, Bruce is around that age. So I think maybe towards the end of this film that they could very much do that. And I want to reiterate, I haven't seen the leaks, but nevertheless, with Arthur Fleck very much so rising up against Thomas, and there being this general uprising in Gotham City anyway, being quite a focal point of this movie, it remains fascinating to me to actually think about how they're going to do this, and if they do it, because I think they might. And as for the cast in general, I mean, come on, regardless of if you haven't seen many of his films, or to if you have seen plenty, Joaquin Phoenix is seriously one of the greatest actors out there today. I mean, sure, there are going to be some of you who might not enjoy some of his movies, but I feel like the overall majority of us are in agreement when it comes to, his talents. And I don't feel like I even really need to defend or point out as to how well he portrays a proto-Joker in the majority of the trailer. Obviously, this movie is about one guy. Sure, there will be other characters involved, from Zazie Beetz' character to Robert De Niro's, but this trailer had to sell one thing to fans, and if you weren't already swayed by the casting of Joaquin Phoenix as the Joker, well, that's his portrayal. That's exactly what this trailer had to sell. And guess what? I think it did that. He nailed this slumped and downtrodden man who has an unraveling unhingedness throughout the movie and trailer to what we hear of his Joker laugh and just pure embodiment of the role. But honestly, this isn't a first for Phoenix, as he really gets into his characters very deeply. Joaquin Phoenix also hasn't really been interested in being a part of the bigger comic book universe. I mean, when it comes to what he said about the Joker movie, is that he's described it as underneath the excitement of all of these films and the size of them, there are these incredible characters that are dealing with real life struggles. And sometimes that is uncovered and exposed, and sometimes it isn't. And so he always felt like there were characters in the comics that were really interesting and deserved the opportunity to kind of be studied. And that's what Todd Phillips sees appealing about this whole idea anyway. And I wholeheartedly agree with this. Going back to the first point of this video, the Joker is a character that deserves an opportunity to be studied on the big screen. And I feel like they're really understanding this character with the way they're deciding to portray this movie. But at the same time, I know this will bring up the point in some people's heads that, okay, why not explore the Joker origin? I get that, he deserves it, but why not do it with Batman and Bruce at a similar age? Why not have him splash in a chemical green vat? And as a result, why not just go about it with an almost guaranteed happy fan reception? Because surely that will bring that, won't it? Well, here's the thing. I posed the question, is it guaranteed? Sure, that would be really cool. I, as a big fan of these characters, would love that. But it would also carry a lot of expectations. To be honest, we have already seen Nicholson's Joker fall in a chemical vat, and sure, people love his role, but if we saw another Joker fall in a vat, I feel like this movie would still fall under heavy fan criticisms with the whole, oh, they didn't do that right, or they didn't do this right if they gave us the whole Killing Joke live action adaptation. Now, don't get me wrong, at the same time, I feel like this movie does hold a lot of expectations for fans as well, but it's an Elseworlds film. You somewhat already have a built-in defense of saying, oh, it's obviously meant to be set quite a bit out of super traditional canon. But arguably, in my mind, it still involves and maintains a lot of elements of the character at the same time, with everything we've already covered about Arthur Fleck's journey in this video. And that's the important part. I honestly do appreciate the vision of this iteration too, and just as I stated at the beginning of the video, that at its core, popular stories like The Killing Joke aside, or what you feel like you think of what I like to call as biblical canon for the character, which I'll say once more, there really isn't any. This could arguably be the personification of everything that is Joker, all wrapped up in a movie, and that's all, at least to me, that matters. So everyone, I hope you enjoyed this Joker video essay, if you will. Obviously, I would love to hear your feedback and just comments in the comment section down below about if you're excited for this movie, or maybe if you weren't excited for this movie, and after watching this, do you feel like maybe I've persuaded you a little bit to be a lot more on board with it? And at the same time, if you are already excited, let me know how you feel about the Joker movie anyway. But if you guys did enjoy this, I would really appreciate it if you would leave a like on it, as it really does show your support for the channel and helps this video out immensely. But other than that, guys, thank you so much for watching. Hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you Jokers in the next video. Goodbye.